All right, good afternoon again, everyone. I love when I get good afternoons back. Thank you. My name is Aisha Glover. I'm the president and CEO at the Newark Community Economic Development Corporation. I'm joined today by one of my staff, George Santos, who's a vice president on the real estate side and has really been helping to project manage this. I'll introduce our esteemed mayor, Rajay Baraka, as well, and thank you for coming out and knowing how important this project is. So the way that we'll handle this afternoon is kind of run through a presentation first, just so that way everybody has kind of access to the same information and data. Then we'll move into Q&As, and then we'll actually sit down in the back and have a little bit more of a round table discussion and get specific ideas. The purpose of today's meeting is genuinely that, to solicit ideas on things that could be incorporated into the proposal, and then as we progress in our conversations, hopefully with Amazon. We want to make sure that that process, quite frankly, is inclusive, and the only way that we can do that, rather than kind of just coming up with it in our heads, is to make sure that we do solicit community feedback. So we want that both on the residential side as well as on the business community side. So we did have an initial meeting on Thursday with the business community, and then obviously we're here today. So just to quickly run through, we'll be discussing the timeline, the impact. We'll go over some of the sites specifically that were included in the first round application that we're including in the second round. We'll kind of touch on the elements of the proposal and then go into community concerns. And for again, the purpose of today's meeting is for us to form a committee. So the mayor has been talking about this for quite some time, and we just felt like it dovetailed nicely as it relates to Amazon, creating a committee on inclusive development. Obviously, there's been a lot of development happening in the city, and we're really trying to think strategically about how we make sure that that development remains equitable and how we make sure that the community's voice is included in that. So as a result of kind of everything that's been going on over the last 3 years, but then just kicking it into high gear now under Amazon, this committee is currently under formation. So timeline, just so you have a sense of what has happened when. In September of 2017, September 7th, Amazon released a request for proposals. And essentially what they were asking for was the cities of a certain size. They have pretty aggressive criteria. That is a publicly available document that you're able to pull up online. But they outlined the specific criteria that you had to fulfill in order to be able to apply. Newark met all that criteria. We got a flood of calls, texts, emails, individuals, corporations, entities all over the city, the state, the region, encouraging us to apply. So on October 17th, the state of New Jersey selected Newark as its sole city. So what that means is after September 7th, the state decided to solicit feedback and proposals from the city, because the state wanted to take the lead in the submission to Amazon. So the state kind of issued its own mini RFP and said to the cities around the state, apply to us, and then we'll decide who we ultimately want to endorse and include that in the proposal to Amazon. So as you can imagine, between September 7th and October 17th, there were a lot of people working very hard to make sure that the state was endorsing only one city, which we felt like would be them putting their best foot forward. And so they did just that on October 17th. The then Governor Christie, Senator Booker, and Mayor Baraka stood together during a press conference to announce that the state would be endorsing Newark as its sole city. That was followed by our proposal to Amazon 2 days later. On January 18th, Amazon named Newark as a finalist. We found out pretty much the same exact time that the general public found out. I think the senator reached out to the mayor that morning, but I found out essentially because of the New York Times article, and they had they covered an exclusive revealing what the top 20 sites were. Amazon has only said that they're going to make a decision sometime in 2018 and that they would be looking to move in sometime in 2019. So essentially what we're in now is phase 2. We have no idea what phase 2 is going to require. We have essentially the same proposal that they've asked for phase 1. They've asked for phase 2, except now they just want more details and data because they're doing a deeper dive and their kind of due diligence on each of the cities, and because they want all the information back exactly the same so they can kind of compare apples to apples. This is to give you a sense of what the other finalists are, or who the other finalists are. If you notice, Newark stands out. So I, quite frankly, probably would have been a little more concerned if we had a Detroit on the list, a city that was undergoing a transformation and its own renaissance. I feel like we stand out. We stand out for a reason, and it's a phenomenal opportunity for not only Amazon to think about their reputational value, them making a social and moral case for kind of being part of a city's renaissance, but also us holding their feet to the fire and laying out what we would like to see from the corporation, right? So New York City, maybe I shouldn't bash New York City, I'll pick another city. Maybe Boston or Atlanta, pick another one, okay. Another city might not have the same appeal in the same way that Newark does, where they can truly be part of our transformation. So the impact. Phase 1, they're looking for between 500,000 and 1 million square feet of space. Phase 2 is between 1 million to 2 million square feet, and phase 3 is between 2 and 3 million. So this kind of sums up, before I go into the jobs, essentially why we were responding to this RFP. Because of the sheer size of the development. We're talking 8 million square feet and 50,000 jobs. So those are 50,000 direct corporate headquarter jobs. So to be clear, for those of you that don't know, their first headquarters is based in Seattle. They are looking to create their second headquarters. This is not a warehouse facility, it's not a distribution facility, there's no retail component here in terms of Amazon.com goods. This is their equivalent. They are rapidly growing. We do believe that this is a talent move and a talent play, essentially because they have tapped out of the Seattle market. They've drawn all the talent that they can draw from the West Coast. So this is a very job-intensive project. And so no matter where they ultimately end up landing, I do believe that it will be somewhere along the East Coast, so that way they're essentially covering both coasts. The jobs in the second headquarters are going to be averaging about 100,000 a year. That's what they've publicly said. And then in addition to the 50,000 direct jobs that are created, there's a 70 to 110,000 additional jobs. Those are indirect ancillary jobs that would be required just because of the sheer fact that you have an anchor of this size moving in. What that means to the state is roughly $900 to $1.4 billion in annual tax revenue. So the sites specifically, just to give everybody a better sense, they're kind of in two buckets: existing buildings and then new construction. Keeping in mind what they're looking for under phase 1 is about 500,000 square feet, and they're looking for that in 2019, so essentially they wouldn't be able to access that in any other type of site other than an existing building. So that includes the Gateway Complex, 33 Washington, which is right next door, 520 Broad Street, and 707 Broad Street. On the new construction side, Bear Stadium, Matrix Riverfront, which is right behind Panasonic, Mulberry Commons, and South of Market Street site. So the South of Market Street site is essentially on Market and Washington, extending over to kind of Washington and Branford, so it's a few different buildings. Essentially what we wanted to do is give them a menu of options if they wanted a campus-like feel or if they wanted to be spread out over a few buildings, but you see the concentration is in downtown. George, would you like to go over the multiplier effect?
So of the 70 to 110,000 jobs that we believe will be created by having 50,000 new corporate jobs in downtown Newark, it's estimated that about half of them would be middle skilled, and about another quarter would be high and a quarter would be low. So to define that, I'm going to try to read this little text here. Low skill occupations are defined as those that require less than a high school diploma. Middle skill occupations require more than high school, but less than a bachelor's. And then the high skill occupations require at least a bachelor's degree or higher. So when you break it down kind of by the occupation, 29% obviously is other, but 18% would be in like sales and related occupations. So you can think like retail operations, another 25% in office administrative, 9% in like food preparation. I like to say, I guess it's 6% in arts design, entertainment, sports, media. It's kind of, you go through all the industry levels and kind of figure out the types of demand on the economy that another 50,000 people in this region would require, and this is what we end up with.
So we've gotten a lot of requests for our actual proposal. You may have seen press pieces from other cities saying that they have revealed their proposal, they haven't revealed their proposal. I don't know that there's any cities that have been shortlisted that have revealed their proposal. Some of them have come out with their full proposal, but they were not shortlisted. We have not kind of turned over and said to the press, here is our full proposal, because we obviously want to make sure that we remain as competitive as possible, right? And so if we're celebrating not just key win themes, but some of our key attributes, another city can just try to match that up line for line. So we're trying to remain as competitive as possible. But having said that, I think it is important for everybody to understand what we did highlight and where we do feel like our strongest attributes are. So specifically around a deep and diverse talent pool, everybody knows that tech is not the most diverse field. So we feel like our value proposition there is really how diverse the talent and labor pool is in the New York City metropolitan area. New York City metropolitan area has the largest talent pool in the country, and across several cities all along the East Coast, we still surpass them, even if you combine Boston, DC, Atlanta, Philly. And so because we do believe that this is a talent play, we think that this is one of our strongest win themes. And then the growing tech ecosystem that's here already, anchored by Audible. Audible is an Amazon company, but besides the big corporations, really thinking about how we leverage the smaller tech startups, the incubators, the accelerators, the talent that's coming out of the university and college system. How do we make sure that we're leveraging that we're capturing that and making sure that the students, the incubator companies are actually staying here and not kind of bypassing Newark to go to New York City. So them being part of this growing tech ecosystem, we feel like is a really strong win theme as well. Of course, just being the best connected location. So not just logistically and transportation, but also just having such a range of lifestyle options. So when you do an overlay of Seattle on Newark, it actually is probably similar size as the entire county. So we wanted to be able to paint a picture of, yes, come in Newark, we want you, we're ready for you. And in addition to all the assets that Newark has, looking at some of our neighboring communities as well. And then the last point of really having a chance for them to help shape the city's future and the trajectory of where we're going, we feel like is a really strong value proposition, especially given the other cities that are on the list. Incentives, you want to run through these?
So everyone is seeing the number, $7 billion thrown around a lot. So just to kind of break that down a little bit, it's up to $5 billion of incentives from the state. That's $10,000 per job per year for 10 years. So if they hire 50,000 people, then it would add up to $5 billion. If they hire 30,000 people, it would be $3 billion. So $5 billion is kind of a cap on that. And of course, they need to prove to the state that they are delivering those jobs year over year, prove that those jobs exist, that they're here in the state, and then they get the tax credits. Certain portion of the tax credits can be used against their own tax liability. Another portion can be sold if they take those proceeds and put it back into infrastructure in and around their site. So some of those monies would come back for like road improvements and water improvements and things like that. So the city really only levies a couple of taxes, so there's only so much we can do. The single biggest thing is the long-term tax exemption, so property tax abatement. This is the same program that the city uses for most real estate developments that happen in the city. Property taxes are high in New Jersey. In order to get kind of real estate projects going, you figure out a payment in lieu of taxes, a different structure. The city still gets revenue from the developers. It's just different than the general tax rate. And then there's the possibility for a temporary payroll tax holiday, especially tied to like local hiring. So the city, Newark is the only city in the state that levies a payroll tax. It's 1% of all payrolls. I know recently we went to the state and we got a change in the law to allow us to abate that if companies hire 50% of their employees, we can abate it if 50% of their employees live in the city. So we're working with the structure with that. And again, these are only things that happen if Amazon builds a building, if they hire people, right? It's not just like a check and then they run away and disappear.
So community concerns and why we're here this afternoon. Amazon has made it clear that they want to fit into and be part of the community. So I think it's just worth kind of saying and putting out there. You can easily pull this up online, right? They haven't had the best feedback. They haven't had the best coverage. They're not named necessarily as the best place to work or anything like that. And I think part of what they're looking to do now is to potentially right-size some wrongs from Seattle and really think about how they fit into a community right from the start. So they're making leaps and bounds now, and they're doing a lot locally now, but how do they think about that right on the front end of HQ2 rather than years and years of being in the city? So these are some of the things that we outlined in the proposal. ICC, NCC, and La Casa have really helped to give us some structure around communities' concerns. We wanted to obviously solicit additional feedback. One thing I genuinely appreciate about the proposal is it's not just asking you for community challenges. They're saying, and what are your solutions? How can we address this right on the front end before we start building out if we do pick your city? So as an example, on the right, what you see is a rendering of one of their buildings going up in Seattle. On the ground floor, they have a 50,000 square foot homeless shelter. So when we say we want you to think big and think innovatively and creatively about what are some of the community concerns and how do we incorporate that into the proposal and into our ongoing negotiations with them so that way they feel like they're leveraging their role as a potential corporate anchor. So we know access to jobs is an issue. We know housing and displacement is an issue. We know that retail rents are an issue. Oftentimes when people talk about gentrification, we typically look at it from the lens of housing, but small businesses experience the same push and the same squeeze, right? When a corporation moves in and the property owners jack their rents up and the small guys and the smaller mom and pop shops are pushed out. How can we think about making sure that those rents remain accessible as well? And so some of what came out of the community meeting on Thursday was a certain percentage of affordable rental units. Is there an retail rentals? Is there a certain percentage that they're donating to a fund? Do we require them to not have a cafeteria to force their workforce outside? Like, I really want us to think about solid solutions that we can include both in the proposal and in the ongoing negotiations. Another big thing that came out of the merchant conversation was around local procurement. Oftentimes, large corporations, there's a bit of a gap between who they're purchasing their products and services from, and then the availability of those products and services within the community. We know that there's a ton of purchasing leakage in the city. The city itself was not purchasing a lot from local vendors, and under the mayor's leadership over the last 3 years, that's gone from 3% local purchasing to 15%, and it's on an upward trajectory. He's been holding corporate partners and anchors their feet to the fire as well locally to say, how do we get your local purchasing to 20% and beyond? So there's things in the works that we are thinking of, but we just wanted to also just be able to solicit additional feedback. And then, as I talked about earlier, really trying to frame this around inclusive development. This list could be a lot longer. We could really drill down on the jobs and the training and education, but that's essentially what the purpose of today's meeting is, and kind of ending on how will the Newarkers of today really benefit from what could potentially be here in 2, 5, and 10 years. So I will stop there and invite the mayor up to say a few words.
I think Aisha's done a magnificent job, by the way. All of this has been put together under her leadership, and you know, we identified her, this whole piece. She's doing an outstanding job, in my opinion. All of the things that they needed were put together very, very, very quickly, amassing a whole group of people, directors, corporations, the philanthropic community. Everybody had to be pulled together and pushed into one direction. It's not all heaven under the tent, but you know, we have gotten us to this point, and I think it's been outstanding where we are. So I do want to say all of the systems that we're talking about have already been either already put in place or have been discussed to be put in place before the Amazon bid went out. Whether we're talking about inclusionary zoning, whether we're talking about a inclusive development committee. Most of that stuff came from Rutgers University, who we partnered with under their climb. Their professors gave the city a list of recommendations around inclusive development. One of them was creating a committee made up of many different folks. We are bringing a person on at the end of March to begin heading up not just the inclusionary zoning piece, but around inclusionary development and the tax abatement piece, where you have to partner with a local minority co-developer. So all of those things we were already thinking about. So when Amazon they come into an infrastructure, ecosystem where this is already happening. We've already have the corporations, the anchor institutions looking at Newark residents to hire. We already have a bill passed that says if you want a payroll tax abatement, you have to hire 50% of Newark residents have to be working at your employment site. Those things are already the law, right? We've already pushed in that direction. So these things, and we have the anchor institutions have already given us solid numbers. St. Barnabas gives us solid numbers, PSE&G. They say they're gonna hire 150 people, or Rutgers say they're gonna hire 200 people, or Horizon Blue Cross gives us 300 people. So it goes around like that. They've already agreed to that. We've already developed a system where Newark residents can apply online through Newark 2020 and begin getting themselves in a pipeline to the corporations that exist in our community, making them obviously more socially responsible for the subsidies and the other things that they get, the benefits that they get from being in the city of Newark and in the state of New Jersey. So we're already pushing along those lines. So it is obviously not a stretch for us to say, Amazon, you need to do this too, and have all the other corporations agree, look, we're doing it, you need to do it as well. So I don't have any real trepidation about trying to get them to adhere to the kind of policies that exist in our city, because these are not new because Amazon is showing up. These policies have been put in place in the last 2 years, which means that we have enough leeway to say these are something that direction the city is going in the first place. In terms of the amount of money or the state is giving, you know, my interpretation of all of that is that, you know, ultimately the city of Newark and most urban centers have been giving nothing. We have been in total denial by the state and federal government for the last 50 years. There's been no investment of any kind. There's been red lines drawn around our city, and we've had nothing given to us, even in the work WPA and you know, after World War II and all of the programs that came, you know, from the GI Bill and everything else that pushed people out of the cities. They purposely did not develop in these communities, and we never had a fund, a fee, an investment of a large account in these communities. And I think it's high time that they did that. We're also asking, we're building, you know, I don't know, those are cameras, right? So that the $5 billion remains, even if Amazon decides that they, don't want to come here. Obviously, I think Newark, its profile has increased tremendously in the last 6 months, and even more so in the last 2 months, since Amazon has decided that we'd be in the top 20 with all of the rest of those cities. Obviously, our profile has increased. So we believe we won anyway. We think that even if Amazon makes a decision to do something else, and we honestly believe that Newark has a reasonable and probable opportunity to be in the top 3, top 5 cities that Amazon picks, or we wouldn't be going through all of this. We believe that. The analytics show us that. The people that are close to this are saying that to us, that we have a real opportunity to get this. And it would be shameful if we did not take the opportunity, given the amount of impact and the amount of jobs that could be brought to this region for our residents who are unemployed, right? It's a privileged position to take that we need to wait for some other thing to happen while people in our community are unemployed, underemployed, and are out in the streets. We have to find them opportunities to have jobs immediately. That's our job, to make sure we attach our residents to employment, that we improve their living conditions every single day. So if somebody says they have 50,000 jobs, it is my job as the mayor to go get those 50,000 jobs. And that's what I instructed people to do, and they've done a brilliant job at it. This is why we're at the top 20. And I don't think, and reporters ask me, oh, is it because of the money? At the end of the day, I think the reality is this: Newark, people talk about Newark in such a way in the past that makes us seem like we have nothing. Newark has the second largest seaport in the nation. Anywhere from downtown, you get to the airport in 5 minutes. It's closer to Manhattan from Newark than Brooklyn, the Bronx, and the Queens, right? We have 50,000 college students in this area, one of the top 10 technical institutions in the nation right here. We have a huge density of talent pool of tech and engineering in our community. We have the most diverse workforce in this area. We have the benefits of being in New York without being in New York. We are right between New York and Boston. You can have the Boston market, the New York market, the Philly market, all of those markets, and still be in the city of Newark and have an opportunity to have some kind of social justice impact, or if that's the direction you're trying to go in, which is what we've been pushing, that you have an opportunity to change the trajectory of the narrative of your company by saying we're going to anchor with a city, one of America's oldest cities, and who's already moving forward. So this idea that we are using Amazon to make us move forward is just false. The city, we're only in the top 20 because we're moving forward. If we weren't moving forward, we wouldn't be in the top 20. That's why we're in the top 20, as a matter of fact. If we weren't doing the things that we're doing, the innovative and creative things in our economy in the first place, if we weren't incubating jobs, if we didn't incubate tech companies, if tech companies wasn't coming to the city, if we weren't trying to do cooperatives and all these other kind of things that people are getting the word out about our city, it would be very uninteresting story for Amazon. And so because of those things that are happening, I think that they want to be in our city. And what we need to do is take advantage of that. And so we are developing a inclusionary committee. Obviously, we were doing that anyway. We're gonna push forward faster to make these things happen. So when Amazon gets here, and I'm claiming it, that we are ready to be able to make sure that people benefit. I had a conversation with the mayor of New York City, who said he was surprised that Newark made the list of all of those cities up there, but he also said he doesn't believe that Amazon is coming to New York City, right? Which means that he also said that if they don't come to New York, we would love them to come to Newark, because if they don't come to New York, exactly what I believe, coming to Newark is like coming to New York. So we benefit because you benefit. And our job here today, which Aisha pointed out, is to put our minds together and figure out how to build an inclusive kind of economy and trajectory for not just Amazon, for large businesses that come through our city that are obviously going to show up here because of what's happening in and around the city, and our location and our demographic in this community is going to attract people in a market that's growing in the city of Newark, which means we have to do more than just fuss. And we're perfect at that. We're good at that, right? We have to do more than just hold up signs. We have to actually think about what we want to build. I mean, my mother told me the other day the difference between you and your father, it's easy to be a poet and an academic because you could talk about grand ideas, but as the mayor, you actually got to get people a job. You actually got to do something about the things that you believe. So it is more stressful for you to be able to make something happen than to just talk about what you think should happen, right? This is what I think should happen. This is what is happening. Because while we talk about these grand ideas and wait for the final day to come, some people are unemployed and people are killing each other in the streets. So ultimately, who made a vote? Who took the vote? You know, who voted that I should be the one living in this situation? I should be the one unemployed while you live down the street in a better situation and you get to have an academic debate about it. I need the mayor to do something today, right? And so I look at this as an opportunity for us in Newark to do something incredible, right? To do something incredible with a massive amount of resources that are going to come into this area, massive amount, right? I want to be able to do that, and I think this is our opportunity to do that. And I think as we create this committee, people should be willing to stay on for the long haul, past this Amazon thing. I think we're going to get it. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure of it, right? So, but if it does not happen, that we are able to engage the state around what are we going to do with those tax credits? What are we going to do with all of those stuff? All the things that you have, because you already set aside opportunity, let's take that opportunity and invest it in these communities anyway. So we need people to hang on with us, you know, and make a long haul commitment with us to be able to figure out what those tax credits could look like for Amazon, but also what they would look like without Amazon. So that being said, bring Aisha back up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess at this time, I'd like to open the floor for some general questions and immediate thoughts that you think would be helpful for everybody to hear before we kind of go out into breakout sessions. So.
The 30,000 jobs that you talked about, are those, excuse me?
50,000.
Well, I know it said 50,000, but I thought I saw something that said something about 30,000 committed to Newark. I'm talking about for Newark residents. You said 30,000, right? Isn't that what you have?
They must promise at least 30,000 jobs. Yes, you got it.
At least 30, right, okay.
Get the tax credits.
Right, okay, so don't throw me off, simmer down. Right, so the 30,000. So, wait, I'm talking, hey.
Go ahead, sis.
My question, this is my question.
Stand up for some.
This is my question, okay? This is my question. I think that says must promise at least 30,000, right? Okay. This is my question. Okay. So, does that go around inside the building, or does that comprise of the actual trades coming in? You know, because sometimes we can start.
Those are great question.
Because sometimes we can build as we're building, and we may hire some Newarkers, so that may be to them, okay, we gave you that portion in the building of Amazon. Now that, you know, because Panasonic played the same game. And so now that we actually have the physical building, now let's pull from Short Hills, let's pull from New York, and let's pull from everywhere in terms of the $100,000 job, everywhere but Newark.
Great question. So thank you for your question. So essentially there's three types of jobs, right? The temporary jobs that you're talking about, construction-related jobs, that is not counted here. You have permanent jobs. Those are direct permanent jobs, and then there's direct temporary jobs. So what you're talking about are the temporary jobs. This number is permanent, direct jobs. So people that would be employed in the building. Then the last and third category are the indirect jobs, and that's the bucket of 70,000 to 110,000.
Right, because I have to communicate this at the council meeting, and I have to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
When I
great
fuss,
question.
when I fuss, I like to fuss. When I'm talking.
Thank you.
Is there at any point that, I know that we're asking for a lot of infrastructure from the state and things like that if Amazon's ask is too much, does the city walk away? Is there any point that the city is willing to commit to that, or you're all in for this?
What do you say?
So I know, like at the meeting before, before we were talking about the dark fiber and getting residents, X, Y, and Z, and say Amazon, reads this list and say, we're not into that, we don't want to do that. At that point, does the city of Newark decide, okay, we're not going to do this?
So I got it. It's a negotiation, right? And I think what the mayor was touching on is we are not desperate. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're not making this laundry list of promises. We're not begging them to come here. We're saying, here's all of our assets. Here's what we have to offer you. Here's how you could benefit. So I think it's a little premature for us to say whether or not we'd be willing to walk away. If they ask us to turn the city over, of course, right? But it's a negotiation right now.
Yes. Similarly, in terms of negotiation, with the inclusionary zoning ordinance, will we ensure that they create the 20% of affordable housing, or are we going to allow them to pay
They
the
have
higher?
to. They have to.
That they will create.
That's an ordinance now.
They will not
So if
be-
there's any
they will not
new,
pay the highway. They will not pay their way out of the affordable.
if there's any new residential, you wanna take that? Right.
So first is not a residential project. This is all commercial, and office space that they're building. Obviously, residential projects will be created because of this, more residential projects. And when you say people from New York and all these places, these people will come, they are gonna come work here. So I don't want, in full transparency, that's why, this benefits the entire region, right? So you're talking about 50,000 jobs, 60, 70,000 ancillary jobs. You're gonna get people from Irvington, from East Orange, from Elizabeth. These people are gonna come, and other places are gonna come. But this is not a residential piece. And how the inclusionary zoning ordinance is written, the developer does not have the option to decide what they want to do. That is in the hands of the city, not in the hands of the developer. The city, and that is why they were so upset about it, the city has the full authority to say, we need you to do this, or you can do this, or you can do that. We are obviously, even in a present sense, so we obviously have discussions with people based on real numbers, based on our real folks to see if this project is plausible or not. My personal desire, I do want them to build workforce housing. I do want them to build affordable housing. I do want that to happen. But I also want to extract wealth from those projects and begin to, and everybody that works in City Hall that has any discussions know that this is what I say all the time. My primary thing is to extract wealth from those projects and redirect the wealth in neighborhoods to fix abandoned property, to build housing, not apartments, to build housing, to fix retail on corridors, to put money in infrastructure in neighborhoods that have been disinvested in for the last 50 years and look like Hiroshima after World War II. It is important for me to take wealth that's coming into our community and redistribute it. That's what I don't want to see everybody living in big giant buildings downtown. I mean, if that happens, great. We want people to live there. We want to give you opportunity and access to live in those buildings. But my idea is to begin to redistribute that wealth into neighborhoods that have had no investment whatsoever in the last 5 decades. And so are we at the table negotiating things like that? Absolutely. But the developer doesn't have that choice because the ordinance doesn't allow them to have that choice. They have to do what the city tells them to do in the zoning ordinance. Is that right, brother?
Hi. The 28% high-skilled jobs, according to the presentation, how many Newark residents will get part of that 20% high-skilled jobs?
So these figures are, to the sister's question in the back, these are indirect, right? So we have zero control over if you want to move in and open your local business, how many people you hire and where they live. We have zero control over that. So because these are indirect jobs, we're always creating linkages for employers, both large and small, helping them connect to Newark Works and the Workforce Investment Board. But ultimately, the indirect jobs, we have no control over because those small business owners, independent entrepreneurs, mom and pop retail shops are not receiving any subsidy from the city.
Yeah, but the high-skilled jobs, what I said, how many Newark residents are going to qualify to receive those high-skilled jobs?
Direct jobs, that's what you're talking about?
Well, 20% high-skilled jobs.
All of these jobs are indirect jobs. So the first slide was kind of going over the 50,000 that's expected from Amazon. So we have certain criteria that they would have to meet in order to get a payroll tax waiver. And then this slide is focused on the 70 to 110,000 indirect jobs. So this has nothing to do with Amazon directly. These would be all the other businesses that are supporting them. So we have no control over who they hire. Is that?
So I just want to jump in there. This morning I had a meeting with all of the principals in the entire city, both public, charter, parochial, St. Benedict's, everybody, right? To talk about not just Amazon, but the direction the city is going in development and preparing our students and our residents to be able to get those jobs, right? So Rutgers University has increased its enrollment of Newark students by 60% in the last 3 years because of Newark City Learning Collaborative and the work that Nancy Cantor is doing there. They built a dormitory, an honors learning a dormitory that they're building here. 60% of the folks in that honors center will be Newark residents. So we are not just working around this side, we're working on the front end to make sure that we're creating a pipeline of young people so they cannot turn our kids away, right? So we are working on that as we speak. So when you say high-skilled jobs, we have to make sure that our residents have those high skills. And with the Newark 2020, well, how Newark 2020 works is that the company has to forecast the jobs that are coming up. So take Horizon. Horizon says in the next 2 years, we're going to be hiring 70 new people in our company. They tell us that these are the skills that we're looking for in order to hire these residents. Our job at that point is to begin to connect Newark residents who have those skills, and even those who do not, to give them the training so they'll be able to connect to those skills so they get the job. So we become a kind of bridge between the employer and the employee to make sure that they're getting the job. So we're making a demand on them, and like you said, this is the question that they're going to ask. Are we prepared for those jobs? They're going to say, do they have the capacity? And they come up with all kinds of other things. Some of it is crazy, some of it is racist, some of it is absurd, right? We have to get in the middle of that, fix it, straighten it out. We have these conversations about drug testing and, all this other kind of stuff and passing these tests. We have to, we've on our end, we figure that out. We go to bat there and create a pipeline, which is already created, so we don't have to invent the wheel or reinvent the wheel when Amazon comes. And I think what Aisha was saying is that because of the Amazon jobs, because of the 50,000 Amazon jobs and the presence that they have, additional companies and additional people are going to come because they know Amazon needs things. They need food, they need paper, they need transportation, they need catering. They need all of these other kind of things, so these businesses are going to come up. They need engineers, they need tech support, they need all of this stuff that are going to create additional people to support an institution like that, which is going to create other jobs for residents in this city. And then our job is to go to those companies and make sure that they also are attached to Newark residents as well. So we're going to do our best to make sure Newark residents are attached to this process, and it's going to take a lot of work to get that done. And we need to do it in an expeditious manner because there may be some people who live in Queens, who live in Staten Island, who are ready to work today, right? And they'll drive here, right? And we have to figure that out.
So that's outside the 50,000, or that's included in the 50,000?
Is what outside of 50,000?
What you just said about when they create other.
No, that's outside of the 50,000. Outside.
Hi. I really love all of what you're saying, and a lot of it is my personal mindset, engaging the community and bringing tying the two together. And I'm a Newark resident. I'm a member of the mayor's 2020 workforce. I signed up 3 times. As soon as it opened, then again I didn't hear anything, and I signed up again, and then I signed up again August 28th. And I've been targeting independently some of the corporations who have moved into the city of Newark. I went to Deputy Mayor Muhammad and asked him, what is his relationship to 2 multinational billion-dollar corporations that have multi-million-dollar facilities here in the city of Newark. He didn't even know the name of the company like what I was talking about. So I haven't heard of Pete being in the 2020 program. I'm also part of a one-stop program because I'm a biotech, displaced biotech worker when all of biotech and Roche closed down in Nutley. So I'm a displaced biotech worker. I have a diverse background, several different masters, several different undergraduate, 2 undergraduate degrees, and several different master's degrees. So I have applicable skills. I'm not hearing a peep from the Newark direction. I'm getting tapped on LinkedIn from Wyoming, from Arkansas, from the Midwest in particular, and Memphis, Tennessee, reaching out to me. I don't want to go to Memphis, Tennessee. People are like, yeah, sell your house and go to Memphis. Yeah, Memphis is hot. I want to be here while this is popping. I want to be on the ground level when this comes off. I'm here. I'm engaged in all of your programs. I'm a Rutgers graduate student. I'll be graduating this May with another master's degree from Rutgers University. That will be my second from Rutgers. I'm not hearing nothing in the North Jersey area. I do get calls from New York. I'm trying to stay in Newark. I'm engaging your staff, but I was so troubled when here's a multi-million-dollar facility, an international corporation here in the city, and the deputy mayor was like, what are you talking about? Where's that? What's that? So I'm troubled by it. When you said the engagement, I'm like, yeah, that's smart. That's how it should be. But then I have to doubt the level of engagement.
Thank you. So I can't respond directly on what the deputy mayor knows or doesn't know, or his awareness of particular businesses in the city. I would hope that the job developers whose sole responsibility it is to connect job seekers to employers have those relationships. Separately, we should just connect on that. A lot of what the mayor was laying out are systems that are being developed right now. That's not an excuse, but it's a reality of you having the gift and the curse of getting in early as we were kind of parallel path figuring out the systems, both from the Newark Alliance, as well as the Workforce Development Board, as well as Newark Works, integrating all these nonprofits that also do job training and systems. It's a beast. And so again, that's no excuse, but I do know that because this process is underway right now and we're creating the support systems, that there have been people that have fallen through the cracks, unfortunately. So if we could just connect following today, yes.
I understand me falling through the cracks, but the multi-million-dollar facility right here in the Central Ward, how you not?
Right, again, I can't comment on why the deputy mayor was or was not aware of the what company?
BioTrial. BioTrial is it's an international,
In all fairness, BioTrial is relatively new to the city. They've stayed below the radar, and they're very insular. So we're still working on it, is the short answer, correcting some of those systems.
Tariq was, when I gave him the telephone number, I gave him my research, he said he would make a connection within an hour. But I still haven't, really engaged them.
Let's connect. Yes.
So I think the conventional wisdom is developing that the Washington D.C. area is a lead market. I'm just curious what your thoughts on that. What's the argument or position for Newark over Washington D.C.?
You want me to sell you on Newark right now? So Newark is the midpoint between Boston and D.C., far more centrally located, far more diverse, with a much greater labor and talent pool. There's no place like the New York City metropolitan area. There just isn't. And the major transportation node we are, and kind of in the center of all logistics, in my mind, I feel like it's a no-brainer. But, they'll have to crunch the numbers, kind of compare apples to apples, particularly around the tech and talent pool and diversity.
So with the indirect jobs, how are we going to work with Rising Tide Capital? And also with the indirect jobs and also preparing the workforce through, through welfare, through Work First. How can we prepare them? Because they have to do 40 hours and that will put them in a better place to be able to take care of their families.
Great question. So on the first piece, in case anyone didn't hear, asking specifically how we might work with a Rising Tide Capital, for example, or Newark CDC, or an Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership. There are a lot of nonprofits around the city that provide technical assistance and business support services for smaller entrepreneurs. And that's the exact type of feedback that we're looking for to call out in the proposal and ongoing negotiations to say, we not only have this tech ecosystem, but we have this entrepreneurial ecosystem here that you can benefit from. So I appreciate you coming out for the second time this week and for the leading question, because as you recall on Thursday, we talked about ways of uniquely coming up with opportunities for entrepreneurs to occupy the retail spaces, possibly within their buildings. We talked about incubator spaces within their buildings. So there's certainly an opportunity there. Just being at NCDC, I'm very entrepreneurial minded, so we included some of that in the initial proposal. We want to definitely be able to expand upon that and solicit your ideas on greater ways to kind of integrate the existing entrepreneurial ecosystem that's here, but then also what we want to grow and develop for entrepreneurs that are not yet, they don't have their brick and mortar yet, right? They're just looking for that entree. On the second part of your question, can you repeat?
Oh, so the welfare, they have to do 40 hours in order for them to get their benefits. So for them to transition to be off the welfare for 5 years, so through the preparation, through Work First, how can we prepare them to be able to work at Amazon and be able to be sustainable to take care of their families?
That's great. That's great feedback. Just figuring out specific ways that we can integrate that and build that right into training programs, thinking about how we're sourcing that talent. So I'm writing that down. We'll take a couple of more questions and then we'll break out into, I think we have one set up here and then another room if we want. 2 more questions.
What transportation investments are being planned to support this bid? And will they be made whether or not Amazon comes?
So great question. One of the things that the mayor alluded to was really a coming together of the public and private sector. We've just had an overwhelming outpouring of support since phase 1. Literally everyone that you can think of is at the table and they're contributing, they're providing commitment letters. They have basically endorsed the project to say, if Amazon comes, here are the specific improvements that we will make. Ultimately, what we'd love to do is be able to just transfer that and say, even if Amazon does not come, but I think just whether it's New Jersey Transit or Port Authority have to see that significant ridership increase before they make some monetary commitment to station improvements for extensions and whatnot, and specifically around transportation infrastructure as well. So the good part is that they're aware of it, they're thinking of it, they've put some things actually in writing to say they would do X, Y, and Z if Amazon were to come. We'd love to get them to a point that we're holding them accountable to that, whether or not Amazon comes, just because how much the city is growing anyway.
First of all, I appreciate the work you've been doing. Just looking at our neighbor city down in Jersey City, what's going on with the development. What are you doing to protect the residents that are here in your, say, reevaluation or assessment coming to the properties? Are you guys giving yourself a window of opportunity to look at these long-term abatements that you're giving them? Say 5 years, 10 years. I know when we were in the council, we did that with the airport, where we open every 5 years that we can reassess that. So I think it's just something to look at. Our sister city, what's going on over there now. We don't want to price ourselves out of the market as well with the residents that have been here for a long time.
Well, the laws have changed since you've been on the council. So the tax abatement law, already in the law, every year the pilot increases. So there's no specific number that they stay to over 20 years. The number increases, so we don't even have to revisit it. it increases. And when it runs out, the tax abatements that are running out now, we are making them pay full taxes if they don't need an abatement. Prudential pays full taxes on its tower, right? We just got out of a meeting talking about a development that's going to happen by the train station where they're going to pay full taxes. If they don't need the abatement, they're going to pay full taxes. All of these projects that have been tax abated for 20, 25 years, and we're getting fight from individuals, you know, who are partnering with these people who want us to give them these kind of outdated abatements at the same increase or the same, you know, percentage that they've had at that point. But not only has the new tax abatement law increased the percentage, so you have to pay more now than you would 10 years ago, you have to pay more. And the number increases. So that's already in place before Amazon. That's what I'm saying. So they can't make an argument that we're doing all of these things because they're coming. These things have already taken place, you know, before they even get here.
Thank you. I just want to thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for coming out. We will just do breakout sessions now. I would really appreciate if people were able to stay for a little while longer, share some specific ideas and feedback that we should be thinking about and including in the proposal and in ongoing negotiations. So both specifically presenting whatever the challenge or the concern is, as some have already come up, but then specific solutions that you feel like would help us kind of make sure that they're engaged and aware right from the front end.
This is the important part. So just want to say this is the important part. This is what we need. They actually asked us on the front end to give them feedback around community benefits and other kind of issues. This is what we need to do. This is our opportunity to put our best minds together, our best foot forward. And we're going to, out of this, develop a committee that we've already got certain individuals committed to be on, a long-term committee that will outlive this process, that we talk about all of the development in the city and not just this particular project. So we need all of the best minds, the most committed people that are willing to build an inclusive kind of development strategy in the city. So thank you.